We are going to move into our fireside chat. So we wanted to hear some thoughts and start a little bit of discussion with 4 expert panelists here. I did have lengthy CVs on all of them, but we're going to forgo that. And I think everybody in the room knows the people that have been introduced and spoken of. Their pictures are in the book as well. We have Chief Frank Muller. We have Chief Mary Beth Michos, Dr. Richard Alcorta, and Mr. Clay Stamp, all people that have played integral roles in the EMS system in Maryland and how it came about. So we're going to start the discussion with just asking you if you have a memory of where your first involvement with Maryland's EMS system was. And Dr. Alcorta has the microphone, so we'll get him to start.
Good evening, everybody. It is an honor to be up here with this esteemed group and to be with all of you who are the strong, essential elements of our system. My memory of engaging with the EMS system in Maryland was in Suburban Hospital and Montgomery Fire EMS. I was starting my emergency department shift there, and in comes a call that says, "We have a self-inflicted stabbing in the chest." And I went, "Oh, this is going to start off really busy." And so they brought the patient back to the trauma bay, appropriately left this knife that was going doing, doing, doing with every heartbeat of this young, okay? And of course, I've called the trauma surgeon and everything. And when I was done, the patient did fine. They took her to the OR, took it out. Lo and behold, it was bouncing against the aorta, not through it, okay? From that, I went to Pete Farney, who was then the EMS liaison at Suburban, and said, "How can I get involved in EMS?" And they said, "You need to go to the academy." And so I got involved and met Willa Little and this beautiful lady next to me, and they said, "You want to come teach?" And that's where I got involved, and then they encouraged me to get involved with the regional council. And that's where I really learned about Maryland's EMS system.
Thank you, Dr. Alcorta. Clay.
Thank you. Does everybody feel warm with the fire going on next year? I'll make sure that's working, the technology. So, I guess where I got involved in EMS was in Ocean City. I grew up in Ocean City, Maryland. And the uniqueness about Ocean City was, we were really busy in the summer, not so much in the winter. But during the summer, our closest hospital, we transported 30 miles to Peninsula Regional Hospital in Salisbury. And there was a phenomenon that occurred that when you would hit the bumps at Willard's, which is halfway to Salisbury, patients would always go into cardiac arrest. Anyway, that's just something that stuck in my mind. Anyway, I got involved in EMS. Mark Bramble was our regional coordinator. Marie Warner, she's left now, but they pulled it together. They pulled us in, and we would go to Easton and have these meetings and eat chicken wings, celery, and all that. And we'd have these regional meetings. You remember, Frank, right? But that's how I got involved in the EMS system, and it just grew. And I was just one of many of you out there that grew with the system. So.
Well, I don't remember any one specific incident, but it really had a center around us looking to get our cardiac rescue technicians certified. There's a controversy, and I don't think it's ever been settled, whether it was Montgomery County or Baltimore City that had the first CRTs, but I think it was Montgomery County. Anyway, we were training CRTs for several years, and under the premise that someday they would get certified. So I guess our first interactions with the system in Maryland was to work with them to try and get the Board of Medical Examiners to finally test these people so they could go out and do the things that we taught them to do. And just, as I said, Montgomery County was one of the first, if not the first, to have the CRT program. And just to give you a little history, we also had the 4th pre-hospital advanced life support unit in the country, a pilot program. And one night when we put the unit out of service, a bunch of us took my nursing books and we went to the TikTok Lounge in Prince George's County, and we wrote the first cardiac rescue technician program. So that, it was born in the TikTok Lounge in PG.
My first interaction with the system, I would say, was back in '72. And this had all this money that was going out to the states to train pre-hospital care providers. Although we weren't called that back then, we were called ambulance drivers, and we were going to elevate them to the EMT level. And a couple of friends older than me, so I was always the youngest, drug me to Easton one Saturday morning to Congressman Bob Bauman's office to meet with him, and basically just raise hell to get more money for Maryland to run EMT programs. And back then it was the Fire Extension Service of the university before MIFRE was established. And I don't know whatever came out of that, but I know I took the 81-hour EMT class a month or so later, so they must have found money somewhere. That was my first interaction with the system that lasted a good 45 years.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Frank. I did read in one account that Frank started out with a summer job in Ocean City, being a paid ambulance driver. Was that your first title, Frank? Were you an...
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah.
Came from Melbourne. Russ and I went down there. Mr. Secretary and I went down there. He found these jobs that, found about Ocean City's hiring seasonal people. Well, you know, I'm young. I'm just following his lead because he's older. And I had a lot of, you know what, and vinegar in me. So here we went to Ocean City. Exciting. Going to the beach. Well, he started a few weeks before me because he was out of school at College Park, and I had to wait to graduate from high school. But I did a couple of weekends, and that's how it all started. And I learned a lot. I found out what an ambulance driver was. I realized the hospital wasn't right around the corner, like Clay said. 32 miles from Ocean City to Peninsula Regional, and it's like, what the heck? You know, just wasn't used to it. I didn't get out much when I was a teenager until I hit Ocean City. But anyway, that was very enlightening, and that's how we started.
Very good. Thank you all. Could we think back on our memories now as to one of the most memorable moments you may have had within the system? We talked about how you began. Was there something that sticks in your mind as a memorable occurrence or memorable part of being a part of the system? Frank, we'll start with you, if you don't mind.
Well, I can remember it. All we had to do was fight for money all the time. The Eastern Shore, and when they established their regional coordinators' offices, it was a change because the EMTs, through the system through DHMH, and some of you my age have been around, might remember Mr. Joe Michos, who was at DHMH. Oh my, when we got to the Eastern Shore, they didn't want to hear about Mr. Joe Michos or R. Adams Cowley for that matter. So, this was before the statewide EMS communication system. Dr. Cowley was trying to get support to develop this system and put it in place. And by this time, I had returned to Elkton, the Sangerly Fire Company. And they said, there's no way the state's putting radios in our ambulances. Nope, they're up to something. So Dr. Cowley, through the MSFA, arranged a meeting, and I remember being hauled down there with the older folks of the leadership of the fire company. We went to Beltsville, upstairs in a smoke-filled room, and here's Dr. Cowley trying to talk to all these volunteer fire company leaders about why it's so important for this communication system to be put in place and allow us to install radios in your ambulances. And must have changed their mind, because I know we received state EMS radios. I'm not talking about the yellow boxes, I'm talking about the Motorola mounted radios, the nice stuff, not the yellow boxes with the little wiggly antenna that they were using in Region 3. Region 3 had everything that Montgomery County didn't want.
The state of Montgomery. We had money at that time. Well, mine revolves around helicopters. And it took us a while, but we did finally get Suburban Hospital recognized as a regional trauma center, but we had no way of getting patients there from the far regions of the county because we couldn't get permission to call Maryland State Police. So what started happening was MedStar got a helicopter, and they decided that they would be swooping into Montgomery County, and we weren't really happy at that. So we worked it out with the medical director at MIMS, who's not here tonight, Dr. Khan, and he told us that Dr. Callie had to go away to California. Someone in the family had passed, and he'd be away for 3 days, and he said, if we needed a helicopter to transport to Suburban in that time, to call him and he would approve it. And the feeling was that once it was started, it was something that would continue. And didn't it snow the first 2 days that he was away? But that third day, the sun came out, Dr. Khan called, he said, you have 4 hours. And I never wished anybody bad luck. But we finally, in the last hour, got a trauma, called Dr. Khan, got the helicopter, went to Suburban, and that's how we got our helicopter service in Montgomery County.
Probably one of the most memorable calls I've had as a medical director was when Carroll County had a major motor vehicle crash, and they had a small pediatric patient pinned between the vehicle, the guardrail, and this unstable vehicle. And should they get a surgeon there to amputate this child's leg or not? And we worked collaboratively with Johns Hopkins. I was actually talking one-on-one with the providers on the field from my cell phone, technology being improved, radio communication being improved, and they sent me pictures. The advancement of our technology, cell phones, the ability to talk directly to a medical director in the system, and I was able to get a pediatric trauma surgeon flown by MSP to the scene to determine whether we needed to amputate this child's leg. And to me, it was the elements of our comprehensive system, the dedication of our EMS providers, knowing what they could and could not do. Already got a line in, got this kid fluid, could feel a pulse in the foot, couldn't get to the mid-thigh. They knew they could get a surgeon to come to the scene to take care of this child if need be. They got there, they established the ability to extricate the leg without amputation, flew the kid back. He had minor surgery because he had a spleen injury, as it turns out, okay? And the system worked superbly because we had designated trauma centers, pediatrics specifically on top of that. 2, we had a fabulous communication system. We had dedicated EMS field providers that knew what they could do and called on those resources to get there, and we saved that child's life. That's what we do.
So Frank may have not gotten out much in Cecil County, but I am a personal witness that he got out a lot in Ocean City. I'm not sure he'll tell those stories, but, huh? Look at Frank. That brain's just spinning right now. So I guess you know, as my mind's scanning what stands out. For me, I ended up having a great career in Ocean City, and I retired, and I had the opportunity to go to work at MarylandEMS as a deputy director for 5 years in the early 2000s. And I worked with Dr. Alcorta and a bunch of wonderful people at MarylandEMS. But there was a time where a certain delegate had garnered enough information and support to dismantle the MarylandEMS system and move it into the Department of Health. Some of you may have remembered that effort. And I remember I went on a blitzkrieg from Western Maryland to Southern Maryland to the Eastern Shore. And, you know, we all love MarylandEMS, and some of us get frustrated with MarylandEMS, and you know what I'm talking about. And my message to everybody was, the system that we have is ours. And if this goes through, you won't own the system anymore. It will simply be a function of DHMH to certify, to do XYZ, right? And we all came together in 2006 across the state, and we squashed that effort. And that's a great memory that I have, where we were threatened and we kept the system together.
Thank you all. Thank you all. And there was a time that we all rallied in Annapolis. Dr. Amin Ramsey and everyone from MarylandEMS, as well as all our partners, went down and we rallied around. There were ambulances circling the State House down there. So I think they knew what the system was and how it came together. Very nice. Alrighty, how about what, over these 50 years, I know we all haven't been there over these total 50 years, but what was the best advancement you can think of and recognize?
So I'll be quick. The best advancement for me was to get rid of the EOA. I mean, if we were going to stick a tube this long down somebody's throat and not look, give us a laryngoscope and let us put a breathing tube in.
I would say probably one of the biggest challenges that most states have is what we're blessed to have, and that is one dedicated BLS, ALS, EMD set of protocols for the entire state. And we keep it current, so it's advancing with current medicine.
I have to say ditto on that one, but I also want to tell you that sometimes you don't appreciate what you have at home until it's gone. And in 1994, I left here to become chief over in Prince William in Virginia. I'm sure most of you know that. And I really missed the system. We didn't have anywhere near the system as we have here. So we didn't have all the coordination on protocols, on what we did from one to another. We had no one to go to when we needed expertise that extended beyond our capabilities within a county. So again, it's just having a system that you can rely on and call upon when you needed it. When you don't have it, you really, really miss it if you've gotten used to it.
I agree with the notion of the statewide protocols. Because in Ocean City, we started in 1975, there were no protocols. You went by local direction, and our local direction was through a local MD who ran a summer medical center, yeah. And thank goodness he had contacts at Peninsula Regional Hospital because for CRT to function, we had to have oversight from a cardiology department. And naturally, the biggest challenge was with the hospital administration because this was something new. And then the protocols came out to where you had direction. Because when we started, you had to have direct order from a physician to start an IV. Time consuming. Even though we did have the EMS radio system up and running statewide. So things have changed thanks to the protocols, and they stay up to date. It's unbelievable. And it's a statewide system. No other state can claim that, even our neighbors to the north. and east of where we're at, northeastern Maryland.
Very good. Thank you, Frank. Thank you. And everybody loves the protocols, I know. We went from so many different iterations. I see Ron in the back, between Dr. Alcorta. We would go through, and there was a solid document at one time. Then there was the binder with the different color pages that we went through. And then we've gone now to the spirals and advanced to that.
That was quite the
that
challenge,
point, yeah. So,
How do you update a spiral, Dag Nabbit?
you have to buy new books. That was what that was. And everything's online now, too. As far as technology goes, is there something that's made a big difference that you can think of within EMS? Dr. Alcorta.
I would say in my tenure, or 28 year, probably the biggest one advance was CPAP for EMS field providers. Intubation, yes, but CPAP, I think, saved a lot of people from being intubated and has made a huge difference in patient survival and outcome. Many times we would have intubated that patient, they would have been on a ventilator for 2 days. And oftentimes now with CPAP, they are actually coming off of CPAP because their congestive failure, fluid overload is being reversed by the time they hit the ED.
So I would say, yes, CPAP is definitely, it was a very non-invasive procedure that saved a lot of lives. The other one is the advent of the LifePak 15, consolidating everything into that one machine. Capnography has been a game changer for paramedics to diagnose issues. And then of course the radio communication system continues to get better.
One of the things, this really isn't technology, but it's more, I guess, along the line of practice. When our CRTs first went out, defibrillated, started IVs on their own, gave a lot of drugs, then they went to the emergency room and there was a lot of resistance from a lot of people there who were trained a lot more hours than the 165 hours we were training them back then. And it really, there were people within the emergency department, well-trained nurses, technicians who weren't allowed to do what we were doing in the field. And I really think the fact that we had a system that included the hospital personnel, that having the pre-hospital component, as advanced as it was, helped then in hospitals like we had in our community, really upgrade their emergency care procedures and practices and allowing people to do more to save patients.
Can I augment on that? I'd like to speak to the medical directors and staff in the emergency departments. What I found was the commitment of the hospitals to provide EMS liaisons and bring EMS personnel, trainees, into their emergency department. Those elements of improving and recognition across jurisdictions, essentially, hospital, EMS, bring them together, collaborative education made a huge difference. And we have today medical directors, jurisdictional medical directors, pediatric medical directors that have the specialty and emphasis within the hospital to advocate for EMS providers. And I'm thankful for every medical director and regional medical director that has stepped in when we've had a problem with an emergency department. Good? Which way?
Yes, technology has changed things, and since I've changed seats and I'm on the outside looking in most days, I have to admit I shake my head some days saying we need to get back to where it was. Because time is everything, but you see what these folks are being asked to do now. What's this most recent thing they're doing now?
They're doing blood now.
Okay, yeah, one of our neighbors in another state, they just announced that they're doing whole blood on the street every day. And these field supervisors carry the whole blood, and they replenish it every shift or whatever. That's something drastically new, and now the Major announced that Aviation Command is going to be doing that. And I think that the focus for these teachers are pre-hospital care teachers. They can't lose sight of their job going out there and having an understanding and rationalizing why certain things are being done. Sometimes that's overlooked. Some of the folks that I hear and talk to, they have no clue. So that's got to be monitored carefully, and it all goes back to their education and how it's ingrained in them to carry on. And time, that's one thing that hasn't changed. Time is of the essence. And I can pretty much speak from that side of it, because I've had to use the system multiple times here in the last 15 darn years. Let me see, dealt with a cardiologist and the cardiovascular surgeons, had a 5-way bypass 20 years ago. But most recently, I've been through the whole gamut. I've been to the burn center, and most recently in the past year, I ended up with shock trauma, of all places. I've been there many a time, but not as a patient. And I'm sorry Dr. Scalia's not here tonight, because they tried their darndest, fighting time, fighting infection, and you saw the system work inside and how it works and why it works well. And you look around you in there at the treatment cubicles of what's coming in there day in and day out, not just by air, but off the street. It's just unbelievable. So the system does work. Even in downtown Baltimore, the system works.
Thank you, Frank. We want to thank our panelists. We are going to have one last chance for them to give any closing remarks they'd like to leave us with, possibly for the future of the system, or something that they would like to leave the group with before tonight's closing.
I'm sure Dr. R. Adams Cowley is smiling, because everything came together as he saw it. If you've ever had the opportunity to talk to Dr. Cowley, whether you wanted to or not, most of our conversation, it wasn't my desire to go talk to him. For some way, and they didn't have the technology back then, he knew when that boy from the Eastern Shore is going to be downtown. Because we'd be taking a patient into University ER or wherever, say, hey, Dr. Cowley wants to see you. And, you're looking around, how do you know I was here? But anyway, he wanted to know what's going on the Eastern Shore. He was interested in what was going on in the field. And I've never heard anyone else dispute that, say, no, that's not the vision I received from him, but that was truly, he was really concerned about what was going on in the field. And I have to say that he had a relationship with Governor Marvin Mandel, and he had a right-hand man who couldn't be here tonight, Mr. John Murphy. Probably knows Annapolis better than people from Annapolis, as much time as he spent down here. But he did a lot for all of us in the pre-hospital setting, when it came to funding, support of the system, including aviation. But he was an asset to Region 4. I can speak for Region 4 saying that.
Well, I'd just like to challenge everybody so that in 50 years, if we're not here, that there still will be a system. And I think when we've talked about things tonight, we've talked to the point where it sounds like everything was always people getting along and, no conflict. But that wasn't the situation. When we were starting the system, we were all kind of feeling our way. We didn't have any books we could refer to. We were all creating a system here. And oftentimes those of us in the region would have conflicts with what MIMS was telling us we had to do or couldn't do. And a lot of it was because in some areas, like Montgomery County, it seems like we always wanted to try something and we were oftentimes told we couldn't. And there are other parts of the country, state, that didn't want to do things that were being imposed on them. And yet we were able, with the help of our regional coordinators, I wish mine was still here, Marie Warner, she was phenomenal at getting us all together talking and coming to a resolution that provided the best thing for the patients in our communities and kept us functioning as a system. So let's always try, even when we differ, to get together, find that middle of the road with the focus being on the patient and what is the best for the patient in our communities and keep the system going.
My perspective is that I want to say thank you, each and every one of you, for your dedication, your commitment. Many of you have spent one lifetime, 2 lifetimes, and some even a little more than that, dedicated to delivering EMS care and trauma and medical care in one shape or another. And it has been an incredible privilege for me to participate in, be part of the family of EMS and Maryland's trauma and healthcare system. It chokes me up because I look around the room and so many of you are close friends of mine because we have worked through hard things, and as some have said, we've agreed to disagree sometimes, but we find a way to make it better. And as long as we can talk and make it better, the future is bright.
So some say this is a career, some say this is a calling, and so what we are is rescuers, we're caregivers, and so there's probably no job, no career better than what we do. We get the high of the highs, we make a difference, we save lives, but we also see things that you shouldn't see, and we go to places you shouldn't go. So I think looking forward, we owe it to all the young people that graduate from high school at 18 years old, and we put them through an EMT class or a paramedic class, and we throw them out in the field. These are kids like we were once. These are kids that are going to see things that they shouldn't have to see or go places they shouldn't have to go that they will never forget. So we have got to figure out a way to teach them healthy coping skills to address the mental health challenge that impacts our industry of saving lives. And I think that has got to be front and center moving forward. We owe that to those kids that are coming into the program, in my opinion.
One last thing. It makes it sound like all we did was work, work, work. But over the years, especially at the beginning, we played a lot too to keep ourselves mentally healthy.
Work hard, play hard.
And I want to introduce the best game master who comes up with games to play at 3 o'clock in the morning at a conference.
3 o'clock in the morning,
Oh, we didn't go to sleep
We were
then.
educating people at that time.
That's right, yes. Many, many educational conferences. Well, please join me in thanking our panel, if they'll stay up here for just a few more minutes. We are going to conclude the formal part of the evening tonight. We do want you to stay a little bit longer and mingle and talk among each other. But over these 50 years since its inception, MIMS has enjoyed the support, as we've heard, from governors, the General Assembly, the general public, and especially the general public is part of our support. We mentioned going to Annapolis, and the citizens of Maryland were ready to support us. Mr. John Murphy, whose name was mentioned earlier, and I would travel around the state different times, giving talks about what the EMS system was and how it became what it was and what it was to the citizens. And we would go to civic groups, to religious groups, go around the state, and he would do a presentation with slides. And there was never one time that one person was within that audience would come up and would say thank you to the EMS system, whether it was a colleague that was touched by it, a family member, or someone that they knew. But everyone at those different presentations were touched by the Maryland EMS system in one way or another. So I think we need to thank the citizens of Maryland for their support, because we wouldn't be where we are today without the funding. So we want to thank them as well. I want to thank you all again for letting me be the Master of Ceremony tonight, and it's been a pleasure as we remembered over these 50 years of the Maryland EMS system to share that with everyone here. We are interested in, we've seen where the Maryland EMS system came from, where we were, and where we're going in the next 50 years. So enjoy the rest of the evening, make sure that everyone gets home safely, and we want to be sure everyone is safe to enjoy the next 50-year reunion. So, celebration. Thank you all.